Hello everybody and welcome back. Welcome to the Hobby Musician. Now today's episode marks the first of a new kind of sub-series that I'm planning to start here on the channel. Now oftentimes here at the Hobby Musician we keep referring to one of our central themes, that hobby musicians are just people that may do something else for their primary career or their primary job, but still are passionate about music and still make music a very important part of their life. Now, that often comes with a balance. We have to make decisions on how we balance our resources. Now, many times we talk about how we can make the most of the resource of money. What kind of gear should we buy? What kinds of things we can do with other gear. But the second resource that's just as important is, what do we do with our time? Since music is kind of an additional passion for hobby musicians, we need to figure out the most effective ways to spend our time. And this episode kind of marks what I hope to be an ongoing series where I talk about things like practice. What is the most effective way for us to improve at our craft? Whether you're a singer, whether you're an instrumentalist, how you approach practicing really can determine how far you go or how quickly you improve at your instrument. Now, there are many people out there with many ideas on what practice means, and I just want to say right up front, I am a firm believer that there is no one single right way to practice. For me, the truth is my practice changes depending on what I'm doing, depending on what's coming up for me. For example, if I know that there is a gig or a concert coming up, I change my practice. I am constantly going through the set list and I'm just playing the songs over and over again to really burn them into my memory and get them under my fingers. But kind of right now, during this global COVID pandemic, there aren't any upcoming gigs. I don't have anything on the calendar where I'm going to go perform. So for me, in a time like this, I really do consciously change my practice. I'll go out and I'll maybe pick a song. I'll find a band that I like and choose one of their songs, maybe to learn a specific melody or a specific riff that they do. Now, oftentimes, I'll even go through and find a band or find a player that maybe can, do a technique or uses an effect in a certain way that maybe I'm not good at, and maybe I don't know how to use that effect the way they do. Or somebody, what we're going to see today, I'll find a player that is using a technique that I absolutely can do, but they're just doing it to the absolute next level. And I have found for me that choosing a song and trying to learn and replicate that is a very good way for me to make incremental improvements. Now, the song that we're going to look at today is by a band that I kind of discovered for myself years ago. The band is Dirty Loops, and originally I only kind of knew about them, or I found them because they were starting to put out, they were posting on YouTube these rearrangements of just popular songs on the radio. Now, the very first one that I saw was their rendition of Adele's Rolling in the Deep, and it was a complete new thing for me. I mean, just the jazz funk fusion that they bring to these kinds of songs was incredible. And since then, they have continued to put out these phenomenal covers of radio songs, in addition to building up their own original discography. And so I have followed them, and I really, really like basically everything they do. And in the past couple of weeks, they have posted a couple new songs. And in particular, one of the videos they posted was just kind of a duet between their bass player and their drummer. And that's what we're going to take a look at today. And when we do that, I want to share with you one of the techniques that I have used to really help me get to that. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to switch this up. I'm going to get a bass, and we're going to take a look at the video, and I'm going to walk you through the steps I use as I try to practice this. All right, well, we're all set up here. And the song that we're going to be looking at today is, as I mentioned before, one of the ones where just features the bass player and the drummer from Dirty Loops. And I'll put this song up here, and this particular one is called Bitten by the Kitten. Now, when I first heard this, the technique that really stood out to me is one that kind of many bass players can kind of do at a basic level, but it is this absolute relentless kind of machine gun driving rhythm that the bass player is going to do with his picking fingers. Now, the notes, the keys of this song are not necessarily that difficult, but when I was listening to it, what sets this song apart is just the absolute blazing speed at which they play it. So we're going to play a little bit of it. I'll try to give you some tips and kind of reactions to it as we go, and we'll just break it down and look out how to practice it in a bit. So here we go. This is, as we said, this is Bitten by the Kitten. You can hear right there, just machine gun. It's a really simple line right now, but it's just perfectly played. The technique is incredible. And here they kind of change up the feel. It's a little more bouncy. Now tone-wise, you can even hear he's got an effect on the bass, and to this point I still haven't figured out, it's either kind of a subtle chorusy thing, or I think it's more likely probably a subtle octave effect. And so that's kind of when we get to playing it, I've tried to dial up a little bit of an octave effect on the bass I've got here. But back to this original kind of driving. This is like a third section, like a C section. Again, just a fantastic example of a simple technique, a relatively simple line if you just look at the notes he's playing, but it is the speed. I mean, he is just a master at getting everything in time, everything in rhythm. And so when I heard this song, I really wanted to kind of work toward this. And this video is not going to cover me going from where I am now to being able to perfectly play this, but it is going to set up how I plan to approach it. So as you can still see from this video, I want to show you one of the techniques that is unbelievably helpful if you want to break down kind of a difficult song or a complex song. And if you haven't used it before, YouTube offers settings that you can adjust playback speed. So that's what we're going to do. Now you can see up here, I'm actually going to go and I'm going to click the cog wheel down at the bottom. And among other things, the third option you can see there is playback speed. Now it says normal, and when I click on normal, it gives me options. Now I can actually speed this up, and I have no intention to do that, but you can see here, I'm going to come down and I'm actually going to set it to playback speed of 0.5. Now the cool thing is, YouTube has got it figured out that even if you slow down, what it does is it still figures out what those tones and those notes should be, and it plays them at their correct tone. Now, if you're familiar, if you speed up or slow something down without accounting for that, you kind of get this like chipmunk, Alvin and the Chipmunks situation, where you take someone normally speaking and you speed them up and their voice goes way up, or if you take someone normally speaking and slow it down, then their voice goes way down. But YouTube has it figured out. It will play back the same note. It just cuts it in half. So now with that kind of figured out, I'm going to go back here. I'm actually going to go back to the beginning. And what I do, when I sit here, so I've got my bass on, and like I said, you can kind of hear I've tried to put just a little bass octave effect pedal on here, and it's not perfect, but for me, as I'm getting started to do this, I wanted to just get a little close. Now, I also picked up my 6-string bass. I was watching it, and I thought immediately, well, I could get by with a few with less strings, maybe a 5 or a 4-string, but I realized that he is actually playing some of the notes up here on the high C string. So the only bass that I have strung up right now with a high C string is my 6-string. So I'm gonna, be true to the video and do that. Now, even right then, you can hear I'm not even playing as fast, just that starting note, as him. So with this half speed, now we can go through and I can start to kind of figure out. He does very specific rhythms with when he's playing those kind of alternating notes, and I want to try to figure that out. So this is how I would start. When I press play here, you can kind of hear it's much slower. He does those little rundowns. So with half speed, I can kind of get that, and I noticed that in his pattern, when he's going to hit those high notes, he's doing the octave and then he's just coming down a full step. He's actually playing an alternating. So he's playing octave low, down low, and he's playing 2 on that. So it's 2 beats before he goes back up to the octave. So it's little things like that I'll have to work on, because that becomes a muscle memory thing. The more you play it, the more you drill it into your hand, it just becomes subconscious, and he has perfected this. And so not only is he playing twice this fast, but he's practiced and he's got it under his fingers, and that's what I'm going to have to do. Now I'm going to speed this up a little bit and go to that next section, or try to get to that next section. And so here, and then so that's the break. So he's doing some walk downs here. Now I'll have to go back and figure out the exact tone. And he does that little flick up to the octave there. And again, just having that second B section, he's playing a little less notes in this section. So I've already noticed that this section, I think, for me, is going to be a little easier to get, because he's just coming down these runs and he's not playing a note every 16th note. He's actually giving some space here. Right there, like, there's just less notes, and so this section, as I said before, is probably going to be a little easier to pick up. Now it's more movement, so I'm definitely going to have to listen very closely and carefully for that. But when I go through, it starts to sound like, this pattern, just slower. Now I'm going to switch and I'll show you the next step of this. Now, by no means am I anywhere close to having this song down, but what I do in my practice regime is, in the coming weeks, what I'm going to then do is I'm going to start speeding it up. So I'm going to go back to that little cogwheel, and I'm going to change the playback speed to 0.75. So now we're at 3/4, a little faster, but still not the same. And I'm going to go back to the beginning and see, just listen to that part again and see how that changes it. Yeah, and right there I can already tell my fingers, that's about my max speed level right now. So just keeping time, not even trying to play the other notes. I know for me, and I can feel in my hands, that's about where I am. And as I said at the start of all of this, when I heard this song, I knew kind of my own abilities. I knew what I was capable of at this moment. But hearing him do this really kind of spurred, it energized me to want to get to that level. And this is exactly the technique that I'm going to set up for myself in these coming weeks to achieve that. And I highly recommend, if you don't already do this, try it. Go out there and find a song that you've always wanted to play, or a song that you just think sounds cool, and use this setting on these videos to help you achieve that. So thanks as always for watching, and I hope you got something out of today's episode. And until next time, play on, my friends, play on.